Hello folks, hope you're doing well. This is Mark Anders from the YouTube channel Finding Hope in Mental Illness. And if you've seen any of my videos so far, you know they're very practical in nature. They talk about, the bare bones of mental illness as I have dealt with it in my life, and many of you have as well. And I mentioned in my last video that I was going to talk about a subject. One of the diagnoses that was made of me when I first was diagnosed was OCD. I was diagnosed with major depression, chronic, and OCD. Well, the diagnosis of OCD kind of got put aside as I went on in my years, because I didn't really have so much of a problem with that as I had with the other. But it came to a point in time when I was looking at some things online, and it's only been within the last year or so that I have found something, and I'm going to give you a link to it in the description, that explains what was going on with me and why I was diagnosed with OCD. When you think of OCD, you think about maybe somebody washing their hands again and again and again, turning off lights, turning off stoves. Every time you have the thought that something might happen if you don't do that, if you don't turn that light switch off, if you don't turn that water faucet off, or if you don't wash your hands again, you have to perform a ritual to try to satisfy that. The ritual is you go wash your hands again. You go back and check the light switch again. And you might do that several times. And that really, those kind of things are the things that are typically identified as being OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. But when I saw this video, and this video was sponsored by Made of Millions founder Aaron Harvey, he interviewed leading clinical psychologist Dr. Stephen Phillipson. And when I watched this video, I was floored, because for the first time in all these years, this has just been within the last year or so, I've dealt with mental illness off and on since I was 17, and I'm 61 now. So, within the last couple of years only, until I really found out what that was that I was going through. What it was there was periods of time when I first started going into depression. Over a period of time, I started having these thoughts that I was abnormal or something, that I was tempted to do things abnormal against other people or with other people, and I knew that wasn't true about me, and anybody that knew me would know that wasn't true about me. But there was such condemning thoughts and just irrational thoughts that kept telling me, yeah, something's wrong. You've got a serious problem. I mean, it just take it to the other extreme. Usually these kinds of things happen, as I understand it. It's been coined, the term has been coined for it by Dr. Phillipson, was pure O, which means pure obsession, pure obsessions. Of OCD, the obsessions is the only thing that is involved in this particular, I call it a subset of OCD. Now we know what we do. There's the rituals that people do when they're trying to offset the temptations and the warning bells going off that we need to wash our hands again, or whatever the case may be. There are rituals that we perform, and that is we wash our hands, turn off lights, and do that sort of thing. But with this particular type of OCD, there's something else that is involved, and it usually comes to people in one of three forms. Now this is per Dr. Phillipson. In one form, it's violence. For example, if you're standing in a subway station back away watching all the people come and go, and you see a man standing over there waiting on the train to come in, and you have this thought in your mind, I'm going to go push him into there when that train comes. Now, normally you would think, that's stupid and silly, and that's as far away from what you are and as anything could be. But for someone who is suffering from this type of OCD, pure O, it might cause a landslide of distress for them. They might really begin to believe that they were that kind of person, abnormal, a killer. You know you wouldn't do it. The man knows he wouldn't do it, but there's this thing that's condemning him that that's the kind of person he is. And so he rears up and he tries to fend it off. The ritual for that kind of obsession is to just try to reason. I would never do anything like that. That's just not who I am. Nothing could be further from the truth. That's the ritual. But the problem is, when you have this problem of pure O, that only seems to reinforce what's going on in your brain and makes it like a vicious cycle. Now, I was dealing with this kind of thing, and I put some symptoms on the description of this video here, some of the things that you might experience if you were someone who might have been affected by pure O, OCD. There's the problem that you might run into. You have a lot of guilt, overwhelming guilt. And you're thinking, why am I having all this overwhelming guilt? Because you're being condemned because this is the kind of person, for some reason, your mind is telling you, warning bells are going off, and you're thinking, but why? Well, this is part of what's going on with this. It's very, very real. Now, some people might say, well, if you had the urge to push somebody off, maybe you do have an underlying problem there somewhere. No, that's not how this works. I'm talking about people that would absolutely do anything but do the wrong thing that's being suggested by your brain, is suggested about you. There's real distress because you're thinking, that's not what I am, that's not what I want to be. But the condemnation continues to come on you, and you're thinking, why won't it go away? Every time you have the thought, anxiety occurs, real intense anxiety. And you think in your mind, you try to reason it away to say, this is not me, this is not what I do, what I've ever done. But every time you do, your mind comes back. You remember when I said before that with mental illness, a lot of these symptoms and things overlap. And one of the things I've said before in these videos is that you cannot reason with mental illness. You can't reason with it. If you could reason with it, nobody would have mental illness. When people are depressed, seriously depressed, they try to reason that, why should I be depressed? There's nothing to be depressed about. I've been on top of the world, and all of a sudden everything is falling to pieces. I'm falling apart. But I don't have any reason to fall apart. But you are falling apart. It's not something you can control. You cannot reason with mental illness, and the same principle applies with this type of illness called pure O. You cannot reason with it. It only gets you into a vicious spiral and a vicious cycle of bringing more and more guilt and anxiety and fear and even dread to your life. Violence is one of the things that is one area that this will affect in the area of violence. Another one is sexual. A sexual. You know, a guy goes out or something and all of a sudden he's feeling these abnormal thoughts about assaulting someone sexually or doing something that, you know, none of us would ever want to consider doing sexually with whoever it might be, young or old. And when he has that thought, he goes into this real crisis of trying to figure out, why am I feeling this? Because it's making me go against it. It's bringing all this anxiety, all this guilt, because I know it's not true. Why is it happening? It's part of the pure O. And I think Dr. Phillipson does a great job explaining that in that video, and I certainly want to recommend. I put the link in the description. I certainly want to recommend that you listen to that, because the first time I listened to it, I thought, Lord help me, all these years, and I'm finally hearing exactly what symptoms I have been up against throughout my life, off and on. The third part of these types of attacks that come against you like that would be in the area of religion. somebody says all of a sudden that they no longer believe in God. Now, they really do believe in God, but they have considered the thought that they don't believe in God, and there's intense pressure coming on to tell you don't believe in God anymore. And you say, but I do believe in God. Why? Why are you trying to make me feel like I don't? Again, it's irrational. It can affect you in the area of religious matters. There are people that figure that, in the sexual area, there are people that think, or made to think, believe that they're maybe gay, and they're not really gay. They don't want to be gay. They want to be straight. But there's something telling them that they may be, and to them, it may be abnormal or something abnormal about them. Now, when I first started having these kinds of thoughts, I talked to people about it. I talked to counselors, psychologists, even my own mother. I talked about it, and I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do about this, because this is really, really terrible, and it's hurting. And it's caused me a lot of distress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of real fear and guilt. Oh, terrible guilt. It would affect me through the day, even as I went, and just on and off throughout the day. It's an agonizing ordeal. And I hope there's somebody out there, maybe, not that I hope you've had it, but I hope there's somebody that can identify with what I'm talking about. And if you don't take it from what I say in this video, please look at that video that I put in the description where Dr. Phillipson lays it all out and explains it very, very well. It's called pure O. He coined the term because the emphasis was on the obsessions and not the compulsive disorder part of it, just the obsessions. Obsessional thoughts, condemnation, everything, guilt, anxiety, all coming upon you, making you feel. In his description and understanding and explanation of it all, he was talking about, that it's our brain that somehow is malfunctioning, again, through chemical imbalance or whatever, is telling us something and telling us the warning bells are going off, and we're thinking what for, but the fact that it's going off and it continues to intensify the feeling of it being real, even though it's not real. Have you been having those kind of thoughts perhaps in your own life? The one thing you do when you have it, if you've ever found yourself always looking for reassurance, always seeking reassurance, you might say to a friend or a spouse, a loved one, am I a good person? Am I a normal person? I mean, it may sound like a crazy question you might ask somebody, but if you're going through this kind of thing, it might very well be a question that you ask, because it's very real in your mind. Now, he talks about ways that can be treated in there that I'm not going to get into here, but just to say, if you do have, and you do seem to have the symptoms that I've talked about, or you see that he talks about in the video, he can tell you what you can do to try to seek help. In my case, it's just been a matter of waiting time go by, and over a period of time, as I've said before, it goes away. Mental illness will go away eventually. When it's chronic, it will last longer, but it will go away eventually. And that form of mental illness will go away as well, as it did for me. But it's helpful to know what it is while you have it. And so I wanted to bring that up because I had mentioned before in my last video, I believe, that I wanted to talk a little bit about OCD, and that I just realized why the original doctor that I saw had diagnosed me with OCD. He didn't tell me exactly what I learned from watching the video on Dr. Phillipson, but once I listened to the video of Dr. Phillipson, I realized that that's exactly what I have dealt with. He lays the symptoms out perfectly. And it was nice to finally have an understanding of what it was that I was dealing with. So I hope this has been helpful for you. It's been very brief. But if you've been someone who has dealt and battled with irrational thoughts of guilt, thoughts of condemnation, accusing you of being this kind of person or that kind of person, an abnormal person, and for you it becomes real, even though you know in your mind that's not who you are. Just realize that you may very well have this form of mental illness, this thing he coined the term as pure O. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I hope that you will. I see that people are watching my videos, but I hope that there will be some of you that will subscribe to my channel. I've purposefully made my videos shorter than a lot of videos you see because I realize people have other things to do, and I want to get just a gist out of something I want to say about a particular area of this subject and then move on and give you a chance to go ahead and be able to see it without having to wait through a long, lengthy video. But I hope you'll go to my channel and that you'll subscribe and that you'll hit the notifications button. You can see the subscribe button down in the bottom right hand of your screen, a little red icon there. But if you go to my channel itself, you can click on notifications there and you'll be notified every time I put a new video out. This will make the 12th video I have put on here. All of them have been designed to explain my battle with mental illness and how I've been helped with it, things that have brought me comfort and encouragement through the years, so that maybe in some way you might feel like keeping on. Sometimes it's hard to keep on, particularly when you're really suffering from mental illness and you feel like nobody really understands. But friend, there are those that understand. I'm one of those people, and many others understand as well. It's a very real problem, this thing of mental illness. So thank you for coming to the channel again today. Please support it. There's also on Facebook, there is a group that I have started called Finding Hope in Mental Illness, and you will see probably my name there listed as Jonathan Anders. But we'd love to have you join the group where we can discuss things about this, or leave me some comments on my videos here, or send me an email. My email address is also in the description section, and I'll be glad to respond to it. You have my thoughts and you have my prayers, my friend. Thanks again for coming by, and we'll see you on the next one.